Love in the cracks of New York. He thought he knew how the city worked. Today, it might prove him right. Keep watching, because when care repeats, it starts to look like luck, and luck might be standing at the crosswalk. He first noticed her on a Tuesday that smelled like rain turned to metal. A city afternoon glazed by old gum on the sidewalk and steam curling from the grills of a halal cart. A passing bus exhaled, windows filmed with the fingerprints of 1,000 small errands, and Jonah Mercer paused at the curb with a paper bag of bolts and nylon anchors he had promised to deliver to a tenant 2 buildings down. Across the street, a woman in a navy blazer counted breaths at the crosswalk as if steadying herself for a small cliff. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, then let it fall in deliberate revolt. The light changed. They did not cross. Instead, the city cued another coincidence. A bicycle skidded on a patch of oil. The rider windmilled to a graceful stop, and the woman stepped forward, adjusting the seat with a deft twist that said she had fixed worse with less time. Jonah laughed under his breath, surprised by the quick lift in his chest. And she caught the sound the way people catch a song they did not know they were craving. He mouthed thank you as if he had been the one saved, then realized he had memorized the shape of her face in the 2 seconds of mutual embarrassment, cataloging its practical beauty, the tired brightness near the eyes, the office-ready resilience softening at the corners. The walk sign blinked, and everyone spilled forward in impatient harmony. He lost her in a thicket of umbrellas, then found her again by the awning of a bodega, where a white cat tilting in the doorway blinked like a doorman calculating tips. She asked for change for a 10. The clerk shook his head. Jonah offered a handful of coins he had been meaning to evict from his pocket. Her name, learned accidentally when the clerk printed a receipt, was Camila Reyes. She worked a floor above his small contracting office, designing spaces that tried to forgive the city for being itself, meeting rooms bright enough for honesty, kitchens where strangers trusted the last clean mug. Jonah, who measured life in studs and plumb lines, decided he would speak to her properly the next time the light changed. But the light kept changing without asking what either of them wanted, and that felt like the most New York thing of all. He delivered the anchors, walked past the scaffolds that stitched one building to the next, and rehearsed an opening line that did not sound like a line. He failed repeatedly. The cat yawned and approved of nothing. By twilight the streets turned reflective, and Camila reappeared with a foam board tucked under her arm like a mistaken wing. She paused beside him, asked if he knew where to find a ladder that did not wobble like a bad metaphor. And Jonah pointed at the inventory in his mind that somehow included reasons to keep talking. They stood in the gentle fumes of taxis and roasted peanuts, trading the harmless confessions of strangers, and the city, busy as a mind trying to forget, made room for them anyway. He noticed the seam of the sidewalk running like a quiet rule under everything, a reminder that even chaos prefers a guideline. A vendor folded napkins with the precision of a tailor, and somewhere a radio played an old love song without embarrassment. A delivery drone sulked in its cage of traffic lights, blinking like a tired idea that still wanted to help. Steam rose from the subway grate with the calm of a kettle left just before boil, perfuming the block with metallic comfort. He weighed a greeting and watched it become heavy in his hands, then set it down before it clattered. Her shoes were city-smart, scuffed at the toe, ambitious without apology. The awning dripped a thin silver thread that broke and remade itself. A patient experiment in gravity. A street preacher promised repair in a voice that cracked on the kindest notes. A bike bell chimed from behind him, a polite comma in the long sentence of the avenue. He realized his heartbeat had adopted the rhythm of the crosswalk countdown, and tried not to smile at the obedience. The air held a faint spice from a cart 2 blocks away, a rumor of cumin that wandered bravely. Traffic rehearsed its grudges, and then forgave them at the next green. Clouds shuffled like tired stagehands changing the light without applause. He filed away a glance for later and promised himself he would not lose the claim ticket. She allowed the moment to be ordinary and discovered the ordinary could be radiant. He let the moment stand. She kept the thought for later. The city. If love arrives at all, it often borrows the tone of errands. The next morning they moved a desk that had lost a bolt and gained humility. Jonah tightened what the factory had left loose while Camila slid felt pads under the legs so the floor would keep it secret. She talked about wayfinding and warmth, The way a hallway asks a question and a light answers it without syllables. He talked about joists and load, how a wall is only honest when it refuses to pretend. At lunch she introduced him to the soup spot that survived on steam and luck, where the owner remembered faces and misremembered names with equal tenderness. They shared a table too small for their elbows and discovered the geography of polite collisions, chopsticks that chimed, napkins that failed, smiles that tried and did not apologize. He noticed that Camila wrote lists in the margins, diagonally, like someone who knows life never moves in neat columns. She noticed that Jonah double-checked every measurement, then trusted his hands anyway. Afternoons became a braided routine, a trim here, a patch there, a minute too long at the freight elevator because the elevator had opinions and they wanted to hear them. On Fridays she placed a plant on the sill and kept it alive by speaking to it like an old friend who had stopped drinking. On Sundays he fixed drawer slides in the apartments of elderly tenants who paid in stories and hard candies that tasted like childhood bus stations. They were careful with their histories, not because there were tragedies to hide, but because the city had taught them that intimacy thrives on patience. Camila's family called in Spanish that folded the day in half. Jonah's sister texted photos of a niece who kept growing while nobody was looking. They exchanged these small inheritances without declaring their value. And the exchange felt holy in a way they did not name. One evening a thunderstorm rehearsed above the rooftops, and the building trembled like a dog imagining fireworks. Camila asked if fear is a kind of map. Jonah said yes, but only if it leads back. She laughed, not at him, but beside him, and leaned her shoulder to his as if testing the structural integrity of the quiet between them. Somewhere below, the cat swatted at nothing with professional dedication. They did not kiss. Not yet. They learned to let the day end without forcing it to be more than it was, and somehow that restraint made the air brighter, like glass cleaned with the right cloth. They drafted a truce with the building and honored it with small actions that never asked for credit. She measured the kindness of chairs by how easily they forgave different bodies. He taught her a carpenter's trick with blue tape, and she taught him a designer's courage with negative space. When paint dried, it left behind a hush that made conversation more careful. They learned the sound of each elevator door as if recognizing friends by footsteps. A window washer waved from a harness and blessed them with a squeaky benediction. They walked past a mural that had lost a corner to rain, and found the loss oddly honest. Camila kept emergency chocolate in a drawer and rationed it as though sweetness were a civic duty. Jonah learned the names of screws like a liturgy, and recited them when decisions stalled. On the stoop, delivery workers compared routes like sailors reading currents, and the city adjusted its tide around them. He let the moment stand. She kept the thought for later. The city approved in its own quiet. The city rarely grants ceremonies. It offers detours, schedules that trip over themselves, elevators that declare a personal day, and emails that arrive like small storms. When the tenant on 4 called about a closet that sighed every time it opened, Jonah brought a plane and a patience older than his tools. Camila hovered with tape and pencil, diagramming a fix that felt like choreography for a door that had forgotten its steps. The wood surrendered its complaint in fine curls, and the closet finally closed with the confidence of someone forgiven. They could have ended there. Life would have gone on with its practiced shrug. Instead, a delivery mistake gifted the building a bouquet of peonies addressed to a stranger who did not answer. Camila adopted the bouquet and placed it near the mailboxes, where petals kept their own weather. That evening the power flickered, not dramatically, just enough to teach every room the value of a steady hum. Jonah checked the panel, found the breaker that liked attention, and restored the grid as if smoothing a wrinkled thought. Camila waited with 2 paper cups of tea that tasted faintly of cardboard and honey. They sat on the stairs framed by emergency lights, neither rushing to name what had grown in the weeks between Tuesday and now. She asked if he believed in luck. He said he believed in care repeated until it looks like luck. She took his hand, surprised at how ordinary the miracle felt, and he did not let go. The city, meanwhile, kept being itself, a saxophone from a distant window practicing the same uncertain bar. The scuff of sneakers, the soft argument of wind against scaffolding. They kissed in the pause between 2 fluorescent flickers. It was not cinematic. It did not need to be. In the months that followed, the building wore their changes. A shelf here for the plant that refused despair, A bench there for neighbors who needed somewhere to say hello. A cat that finally allowed its name, Atlas, because he had always been carrying something. When they signed a lease together, the landlord looked relieved to approve what the hallway had already understood. And on a morning that smelled like new coffee and rain rinsed of memory, Camila pinned a small drawing near the door, a ladder that did not wobble. And Jonah laughed, grateful for a life that no longer waited for the right light to change. They framed the days with rituals too modest to brag, a shared orange, a split crossword, a silence that held. Neighbors began to borrow tools and return them with thanks shaped like cookies. Old paint surrendered to new color in deliberate coats that felt like promises kept slowly. They discovered the roof at dusk and counted water towers like witnesses. On payday they tipped extra at the soup spot. A vote for survival placed in the jar without ceremony. A child drew hopscotch squares on the sidewalk, and their numbers invited grown feet to remember lightness. Atlas accepted petting only on odd days, enforcing boundaries with a scholar's consistency. They cataloged the city's storms by scent and gave them names that never made the news. On sleepless nights they listened for the night bus deep yawn, and felt less alone. The future arrived without trumpets, in mail keyed to both names and a key that finally fit cleanly. He let the moment stand. She kept the thought for later. The city approved in its own